Welcome to Talkless Water, the podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of water with those making waves. My name is Todd Butler, and I'm your host for Talkless Water. I'm also the principal of Collaborative Water Resolution, through which I conduct water research, provide facilitation and mediation services and training, and recruiting services for water executives. You can find out more about Collaborative Water Resolution at waterdisputes.org. My guest today is Tony Willardson. Tony served as executive director of the Western States Water Council from July 2009 to August 2025. Prior to 2009, he had served the council in various capacities beginning in 1979. Tony is a graduate of the University of Utah, where he earned a BA in political science. He's also a graduate of Brigham Young University, where he earned a Master's of Science in Public Administration. He's a member of the National Honor Society for Public Affairs and Administration and has been recognized by the American Water Resources Association with the Mary H. Marsh Medal for exemplary contributions to the protection and wise use of the nation's water resources. Tony has authored, co-authored, or served as a contributing editor for numerous publications on a wide range of water issues, such as water needs and strategies for sustainable future, growth, drought, groundwater management and protection, groundwater recharge, precipitation forecasting, remote sensing, state water plans, water everything you can imagine. Going through this list, it seems like you have wrote a paper on, which is fantastic. Tony, welcome to Talkless Water.
Todd, thanks for the opportunity to talk water.
Well, I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I know you've been very busy, but you just kind of wrapped up a long career at the Western States Water Council. And so before we get into that, let me ask you, when did you know that you wanted to have a career in water? You have a recollection of that?
You know, it's interesting. When I was growing up, my father was a city manager, and then he managed a rural electric co-op. And so I grew up around power and
Ah,
really thought I would get into the energy arena. In fact, I served as an intern in the Office of Congressional Affairs for the Department of Energy in the mid 70s. And so that's the direction I thought I was going.
huh.
And my father actually saw a notice of an opening with the Western States Water Council for a research analyst. And I applied. As was mentioned, I attended Brigham Young University and the University of Utah. I'd been accepted into law school at both, but my interest was in natural resources. And actually, about half the folks that applied for the research analyst position were law students or attorneys. So I decided that was the work I wanted to do when I got out of law school. So I went on and did my master's degree, but actually started with water then before I had actually graduated from college.
Huh.
I went to the first council meeting in 1979. So, yes, we're celebrating the 65th anniversary of the council, and I've been with them for 46 years.
Yeah, my goodness. Um, so you said 56 or 65th?
It was created in 1965, the council.
Okay, wow. Didn't realize that. And so you led the council for 16 years. So tell us more about what the Western States Water Council does, and then what its mission is now.
Sure. The council is a government entity. We're considered to be an instrumentality of each and every one of our 18 participating states. It was created by the Western Governors Conference in 1965. And originally there were 11 members. And was created to provide a collective Western voice representing states' interests as well as their rights and prerogatives in an era of rapid development of Western water resources, primarily federal development. This would have been about a year after the construction began of Glen Canyon Dam.
Hmm.
So Uh, each of the governors can appoint 3 members and as many alternates as they wish. Each state gets just one vote. And we cover the states from Texas to Alaska. We're funded primarily by state dues, which are the same for every state. So whether you're California or Idaho, you pay the same. That was a conscious decision. No one wanted anyone buying a bigger voice
Ah,
in water in the West. So our stated mission is to ensure that the West has an adequate supply, adequate, secure, and sustainable supply of water of suitable quality to meet its economic and environmental needs now and in the future.
so I guess when the council was established, was there a concern that maybe uh, the individual states were not giving a coordinated message to Congress about its needs or the various federal agencies, and this was a way to get everybody on the same page and be more effective in terms of advocating for Western water needs?
I think definitely that was one of the reasons. In that period of time, there was a serious drought in the Mid-Atlantic states, and they passed the Federal Water Resources Planning Act, which created a number of river basin commissions, created a Water Resources Council as a cabinet level entity,
Hmm.
and also created a grant system for state water planning. And that Water Resources Council still exists in name only, but has not really functioned since about 1980. There were a Missouri River Basin Commission that no longer exists. You'll still see, in fact, I think I just saw legislation to review some of the commissions in the East, the Potomac, and some of the other commissions there that were really created back then. So, as this effort was getting started, I think the governors felt that they needed a state voice in a lot of the planning efforts that were going on at that time.
Are there any other benefits that the council provides to the member states?
I think the biggest benefit is that opportunity to just come together and learn from each other, uh, and from each other's experiences in addressing common problems. But we meet 3 times a year. We rotate our meetings among our member states, which originally there were 11, now there are 18. And that gives members a chance to gain a personal perspective on other states' water management challenges. And we strive to bring our members together, as well as others, in finding solutions to some of these pressing Western water issues. And when we speak with one voice, others listen, including the Congress and the administration. So I think the council has, developed a reputation for its expertise and for speaking with one voice for water in the West.
So it sounds like it also might be a forum for ideas to be shared among the Western states. I imagine you probably have presentations from various states about programs they have that they found effective that other states might have an interest in trying to do something similar.
Yes, and I definitely think that it provides an opportunity to see what has worked and sometimes what has not worked, and save some states from making the same mistake, or at least finding areas where they may be more successful in putting their resources. Uh, our vision statement recognizes that in the West, water is an increasingly scarce and precious resource. And we will continue to face unique hydrologic, legal, and infrastructure challenges. In the West, we're trying to get water. In the East, they're trying to get rid of water. We
Right.
don't have the same thing if you're in East or West Texas, I guess.
Yeah,
So the,
seems like it. Yeah.
and we all face some of the same challenges of population growth, competing economic and ecological demands, as well as changing social values. And all of that has led to stress on our surface and our groundwater supplies in many areas, and has increased conflicts and the complexity of those conflicts among users and uses.
You said something about the value of knowing about efforts that did not work out, that didn't prove to be fruitful. I think that's a I think that's a critical uh, element that is often overlooked. The value of knowing about failures, um, as opposed to just hearing about something when it's successful. And I can think of a number of instances in the water world where um, you know there had been attempts to do something similar in multiple places, and I always get the impression they didn't really examine why they didn't work the first time because they're doing it exactly the same way, and so um, you know
And I think around that thought as well, part of our vision is that we recognize that effectively addressing these challenges requires stronger collaboration and cooperation that transcends political and geographic boundaries, whether that be between states, federal agencies, tribes, local communities. And we have a set of principles, and just briefly some of those. One is that we have to recognize water as a public policy priority. I think for too long we've taken for granted that when you turn on the tap, the water is there,
yeah,
and that's becoming more challenging. Another is that we really believe that state primacy is fundamental to a sustainable water future. Uh, Third, that we need an integrated, collaborative, grassroots approach to water resources management. That sustainable water resources management and development should improve our economic and environmental security and our quality of life. And that a secure and sustainable future is going to be determined in part, too, by our ability to maintain, replace, expand, and make the most efficient use of our current critical water infrastructure. And lastly, that all levels of government must prioritize the collection, the analysis, and the open sharing of reliable water data, since that's so critical to decision making.
that's a great list. I I can't argue with any of those items on there. I think you're spot on. So, kind of thinking back about the accomplishments of the Western States Water Council, going back to 1965 even, what are some that stand out to you during the history of the council or during your tenure leading it?
Sure. Well, and I think, finding consensus or striving to find consensus among our states and finding common ground on a lot of issues so that we can share potential issues. That's been a big accomplishment of the council. We rarely adopt a policy position that doesn't have unanimous support. I can tell you one that we struggled with, and that was a position with regards to waters of the United States and the definition under the
Yeah,
Clean Water Act. But we were able to come to a consensus, or at least states that chose to abstain rather than obstruct what the other states felt like. And that's one thing I won't miss in retirement is the next Waters of the United States rule. I think there have been four or five or six now.
oh gosh.
But
Let me
I
let me
think
tell
some
you
of those,
before you move off of that. I My first internship in DC in '87 uh, involved wetlands, and it became not just wetlands, but then moved to uh, the EPA and Corps' delineation manual, right? And the changes with all that, and so like you say, what's the next iteration, right? I mean, it's not over yet. There's going to be another round, and it's going to be changed again, and it seems like that is uh, a question that just never gets settled.
and I think too, the recognition, or maybe there was a lack of recognition, that the states have jurisdiction over all waters within their boundaries. And I think we're seeing the states take more responsibility for recognizing that they need to manage their own waters and protect them and wetlands, obviously.
Right.
But I would say one of the big accomplishments over the last, more than a decade was the creation of what we call our federal agency support team. And related to that, theme of being collaborative, we have 15 plus, I think, federal agencies now that have named a point of contact to work with the council. And they meet on a monthly basis. We have weekly calls. They too we've created a liaison position. It's a detail from one of the federal agencies. They pay the liaison salary, but they work with us closely with our meetings, with our agencies, with us commenting on agency actions. And that's been a big help. And that also was created at the request of Western governors. It was part of a report that we did in 2008 asking for that assistance. We'll see where that goes now, but that
Yeah.
also means we've worked closely with the previously so-called Federal Water Subcabinet, now the Water Policy Committee that uh, President Trump actually initiated by executive order in his first administration, and in the last few years has actually been codified by Congress in the Floods Act. So has operated more on assistant secretary level. And it's been an opportunity for us to discuss issues with those principals, at least on a biannual basis, and with our Westfast team on a regular basis.
Is that Assistant Secretary of the Interior?
It includes actually it has been co-chaired in the past by Interior and EPA, but it includes the major federal agencies. So it does include defense, it includes commerce and energy and agriculture, obviously. They haven't been as active recently as they were in the first Trump administration, and well, as we all know, they're still waiting to see many of those positions confirmed, at least at the assistant secretary level.
Right. Right.
I've
Okay.
also mentioned, well, coming from somewhat of an economics background, I minored in economics. I learned something about markets, and one thing I learned was for markets to work efficiently, you have to have well defined rights. And that's led us into a number of issues. For over 30 years, the Council has worked with the Native American Rights Fund to promote and move through Congress tribal water settlements, which in the West have been a big unknown. As the Winters Doctrine of 1906,
I think so. Yeah.
established those Federal Reserve water rights for the tribes and are held in trust. And without resolving some of those claims, the non-tribal users really don't have certainty as far as their uses. And and the tribes themselves have benefited tremendously because usually with that federal legislation comes money to help them develop their water resources that they otherwise would not have. And we found that the negotiations have worked a lot better than litigation. I
Right.
think the Wind River tribe in Wyoming litigated for 20 years, went to the state Supreme Court 3 times. The tribe got their water rights, but they haven't been able to fully develop that water because they just didn't have the resources. And and I think one thing that the settlements that we've talked about, one of the benefits is just peace in the valley. So everyone has some certainty with what their rights are and they can move forward. So I think there are over 30 tribal water rights settlements now. There's more to be done. The last Congress appropriated, I think, in the neighborhood of $5 billion to help resolve some of those claims. There are still claims that remain. So working with the tribes has been productive, I think, for both them and for non-tribal communities. But on the water data side, too, it's been, I think about 2007, we got involved because the state of Idaho was using NASA technology, thermal infrared imagery with the Landsat satellite to measure, monitor, and manage their water resources. And NASA on Landsat 8 had dropped that instrument.
Oh,
And we worked with our senators, Western senators, all of whom were aware of the importance of water in the West. And from my perspective, not being a scientist per se, but it wasn't hard to note that measuring and monitoring water use was going to be critical as we moved into the future, and I think remains critical. We were able to get work with our senators and get a letter to the Appropriations Committee that said this should be a priority. And we had 12 Western senators sign. And it's unusual by today's standards in that 6 of those were Democrats and 6 were Republicans. So it was truly bipartisan. And we're going through that again now. That was Landsat 8. They've launched Landsat 9. Now we're working on what they call Landsat Next.
yeah,
And it is a triplet, 3 smaller satellites that will have a greater or a shorter return time. But this administration is looking at spending on all of these kinds of projects. And so it's being delayed somewhat. And so we'll see where that goes. But I would say most of our 18 member states now are using some sort of remote sensing in their water management and planning and water rights administration. So that's going to be a critical area. And to follow on that, we looked about 2004 at some of the state planning efforts and projected shortages over the next 30 years and how states plan to meet those demands. They were kind of all over the board. And when we asked them, the U.S. Geological Survey was doing a 5-year water use report. And we asked them about the last report that was available, which I think was 1995. And some of the states said that, yeah, those are the numbers we gave them. Others said, we have no idea where they got those numbers.
yeah,
And when we ask about projections 30 years out, I think one of the best responses was, well, this is our unsubstantiated estimates, or this is our best wild guess.
yeah,
So Texas, I think, is one that has a 60-year water plan. And many of the states are looking to the future and how they're going to meet their demands. But in large part, at that point, they did not have a lot of data on water use. And that led us about 2009, with some money through the Western Governors Association, to begin to build a water data exchange. And we now have, and it's accessible through our website, and I'll give you that citation at the end of the
sure.
podcast, but it's westernstateswater.org and WADE, the Water Data Exchange. We have 2.5 million water rights in our 18 states where you can look at the type of use, the source of the water, the priority date for the right, to the extent that our states have that information in a machine readable format. Some states, like New Mexico, have not completed adjudication, so they don't assign a priority date to their water rights. And of course, as we know, in Texas, if you're looking at groundwater, that's a private property right, so there are
Yeah,
no priority dates. But you can look at the owner. You can actually click on a water right, and it will take you to the state landing page for that water right and all the information. What the permitted flow or volume is, if the state, and we've done some updates recently so that we can present time series data. So if the state actually has diversion records, we can show those records. Or if they have reservoir release records, we can show that kind of information. So we're growing with that. And as part of that, we've created what we call, well, it's a dashboard called our Western State Water Data Access and Analysis Tool. And that's also available on our website. From that, we've taken the next step, and we've had a lot of philanthropic support. The Walton Foundation, the Water Foundation, Stephen F. Bechtel, Moore Foundation, many that saw what we were doing and actually came to us and said, we'd like to support what you're doing. And we've had a WaterSmart grant over the past year that has helped us develop what we call our Water WestCat, our Western State Water Conservation Application Tool. And this allows us to tie this remote sensing data, or OpenET, as a measure of consumptive use to the water right, and would facilitate marketing and transfers, some of which we've seen in the Upper Colorado River Basin with a system conservation pilot program. We've demoed it for the Great Salt Lake Commission. This governor here in Utah has closed the basin to further appropriations, and they have $50 million that they have put towards transfers, as well as improving irrigation efficiency to try and improve the environmental flows into the lake. So we think there are a lot of opportunities across the West for that kind of water marketing tools, and we're working towards that end now.
Well, as somebody who does water resources research, um, that's got my attention. Learning about Wade and WestCast, and I'm gonna, when we conclude this um, podcast, I'm gonna learn more about those tools. Um, let's turn though to uh, lessons that you think have been learned in recent years in water policy. Any of those come to mind?
You know, I want to go back quite a ways, back to our 20th anniversary in 1985. And as to mark that anniversary, we actually received a letter from President Ronald Reagan. And of course, as governor, he was an ex officio member of the council
Hmm.
and appointed membership. But in that letter, he wrote that virtually from the outset of your organization, I expressed the conviction that cooperation among the states was the best way to achieve optimum use of water resources in the West. States are primarily responsible for the management, regulation, and development of water resources. A federal interest in Western water resources remains, but here too, cooperation is the key. And, you know, I think that is something that we have learned and continue to learn. Uh, that, and I like to share with I like to remind my federal friends that the states created the federal government and not the other way around. And, you know, states are not stakeholders. We are sovereigns, and we do have primary responsibility for water resources management and regulation. And that means we have to be more involved as states, I think, in addressing our own problems and not wait for someone else, specifically the federal government, to solve those problems for us, or the courts. And, you know, I think we've seen with the courts at times that they don't fully understand Western water law. There are a few states which have specific water courts, but it's a steep learning curve for many in the judiciary. And sometimes they come down with a decision that raises more questions than it actually answers.
Well, I've been involved with the National Judicial Center's Dividing the Waters program before, and seeing the value in judges really getting some education about water. And I'm familiar with water courts in states like Montana and Colorado, and I always wonder if that's maybe something that Texas should take a look at, is having a system of water courts.
Yeah,
Um,
we've specifically supported with with a resolution that dividing the waters for the reasons that you described. And a number of our states have actually stepped up and provided funding for some of the work that they're doing.
well, you noted that states are many states are working together, and if anyone who's listening to this podcast listened to the last podcast, a few weeks ago, it looks like Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas are on the verge of settling the compact litigation over the Rio Grande, so that they've come up with a mutual solution that everyone can accept. And uh, but we still have issues on the big Colorado River out west, and I guess some dates coming up where hopefully everybody's going to have some agreement on what to do, or maybe not. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's definitely a challenge. And obviously, the upper basin and the lower basin have different perspectives on what the compact says and how that should be administered. The lower basin look at it as a delivery obligation. The upper basin has a limit on their depletions. And given the drought over the last 20 plus years, the upper basin has never had a full 7.5 million acre feet to put to use.
Hmm.
And the lower basin for many years had been using more than their legal entitlement because the water was available. But now with the development in the upper basin, as well as development in the lower basin with Las Vegas, with the Phoenix metropolitan area, they have grown into their water allocations. And we can't forget Mexico, too.
Right,
I know that there are efforts now to look at not just the compact and how it divided the water, but how much water is actually available and what does that mean as far as how much can be delivered. And still, I think one of the big challenges is maintaining the infrastructure and the ability to generate power. Glen Canyon Dam and Hoover Dam are a big part of our renewable power system. So those are challenges that they're going to have to address. I guess as difficult as it is, they've addressed difficult issues in the past and come to a consensus. And at least at this point, the Department of Interior has not yet had to step in and say, as the water master, we're going to manage this river. And their authority is generally in the lower basin and not as much in the upper basin, although we all depend on those reclamation reservoirs. And a few more prayers for more rain and snow would help.
right, right. Thinking about um, those water issues that where Western states have made progress on, and where they've not made so much, just in kind of in general, what would you put in both categories? What would you say, I guess, first is are are a set of issues that Western states have really kind of made the least progress on?
I think the biggest challenge is, and we've seen some changes recently, is the amount of money that they're willing to put into addressing the issues. When they talk about big infrastructure, often it's roads, it's bridges, it's airports, but obviously water and wastewater is just as important to our economic and our environmental well-being. And it's going to cost more to address these issues moving
Right.
forward. We've been in an era where we had some pretty low interest rates after COVID and the shutdown. That's not so much anymore. The cost of materials is increasing. But I remember at one of our meetings, one of our members holding up his cell phone and holding up a bottle of water and asking what your monthly bill was for your cell phone compared to your water bill. And generally, the water bill is only a fraction of what your other entertainment maybe is.
Right.
And we're going to have to invest more. We have a lot of aging infrastructure, which is a real challenge, as well as addressing demands of new growth. And as I mentioned, the Great Salt Lake is an environmental and an economic issue. How are we going to keep a reasonable amount of water in stream for the environment? All of those are difficult decisions. I was involved early on in some water education efforts, and I think there needs to be more of that. Just people don't always understand what the trade-offs are.
Right.
And I think even after, 20 plus years of drought in the West, folks were saying, so we're in a drought? Uh, yeah, unless you're a farmer, as long as you turn the tap and the water comes out, you don't think about that very
Hmm.
much. And I think that is going to be a challenge as folks recognize that it's going to take more commitment and more resources and on the part of the public to just be more conscious of our water use and what we can do to reduce use and stretch our supplies.
So, what do you think are some of the issues that the Western states have actually made progress on?
I think obviously in the area of drought, there are a lot more states that have plans to mitigate drought before it happens and to address some of those impacts. Uh, and as part of that, I think too is you're seeing much more in the way of conjunctive management of surface and groundwater supplies. A recognition that our groundwater resources are not infinite, and that as we use those resources, we're seeing areas where that is having an impact on surface water. And generally, those are the senior users. I think we are making progress with agricultural efficiency as well as conservation at the municipal level. I think it will take more of an effort in that area to balance our supplies and demands, and uh, building more reserves is going to be something that I think we will see, but on a smaller scale, and maybe that's where groundwater recharge comes in. We're seeing a lot of aquifer storage and recovery efforts, and we're replacing some of those depleted supplies when we have the opportunity. We have been involved too over the years, well, at least in looking at some of the augmentation opportunities. And one of our last meeting here in Utah, was a presentation on cloud seeding and the potential for some water harvesting, actually getting more rain and snow. Of course, in a drought, that's difficult because there are no clouds.
Right.
But when we have the opportunities, I think we'll be looking at uh, some of that technology as well, more and more. There are a number of states that do it now, and many in the Colorado River Basin here in the West.
So, uh, kind of thinking about biggest needs uh, for most Western states regarding water, you've already mentioned money. Um, any others come to mind there?
Well, I think as it's always been said with water, we're not making any more of it.
Hmm.
It is a finite supply. So when the supply goes down, demand goes up and costs go up. Uh, I think we will be looking at ways of how we change the way that we use water and how can we'll see more shortage sharing agreements, more water marketing and banking. I think that's in the future. There aren't many big reservoir sites yet to be developed or water to fill those reservoirs.
Right.
And so, how are we going to share what we have? And that may mean some adjustments socially, culturally, legally. And I think states have taken a lot of steps to encourage water transfers, temporary, even permanent. And I will see more of that. Another area when we talk about some of the challenges that we're facing is just the uncertainty. And we've been proponents, and with Congress over the years, I think the House just, believe passed the Weather Research Act. And as part of that, you mentioned I've been involved with the National Integrated Drought Information System. But that act also provides for some seasonal to sub-seasonal research. Can we get beyond the weather frame of, maybe a week to 10 days?
Yeah.
Can we begin to better predict what the weather is going to be like in 3 months? Currently, NOAA puts out a 90-day outlook with equal or greater chances of normal, whatever normal is.
Right.
And at least one of our members described it as a horoscope. So we don't really have a lot of skill at this point in projecting precipitation, beyond about 2 weeks. And if we had that information, that would facilitate some marketing
Yeah.
with the agricultural community if they knew that they were going to have a limited supply. And I think we'll see changes, as I mentioned, culturally and socially in acceptance of those kind of temporary transfer arrangements. And eventually, possibly permanent transfers where the water supply just will not support the existing economy anymore.
Well, I'm a big proponent of water markets, and they're coming, or more of them are coming, I should say. We have some, but I think more are coming in the future. Um,
You know, I have a friend as well who's he started a nonprofit I think called Water Card, and what his the concept is that there are corporations that we could bring some of those resources to bear to address some of these challenges and to help pay for conservation where maybe the user's willingness to sell is not what the buyer's willingness is to pay that price. But many corporations now are trying to become, net zero, whether it's
right.
in energy or water. And are there opportunities to bring in corporate partners? And as I mentioned, Walton Foundation has been a big supporter of some of the work that we have done.
So, kind of looking at your crystal ball, what do you think is the biggest single water challenge facing the Western states over the next 20 years? If you had to pick one, what would you say it is?
I definitely think it's going to be to work together to live within our existing supplies. And how are we going to change the way that we manage and we operate to be able to do that? Uh, we do not know what the future is going to hold as far as our water supplies, but we can manage our demands. And I think you'll see water moving to, in the economics terms, higher uses.
Yeah.
But how can we do that and still protect, our rural economies and rural way of life and those values in the West of
Right,
independence?
right. Well, I talk a lot about that in water markets for Texas because that's a key. Uh, if rural communities think that they're going to end up being obliterated by water markets, then they won't happen in this on the scale that we need. But there are ways to make sure that not only they protected, but they're uh, participants who benefit from those markets. And you've seen that, for example, with the Edwards Aquifer water market. Um, so my last question, Tony, is how can our listeners find out more about the Western States Water Council? And also, there have been some changes there. Maybe you could tell us both about those.
Yes, yes. So the council's website is westernstateswater.org, and you can find the council's positions, our staff, our membership, just about everything you may want to know. It also includes a link to our WestFast team and those members on our federal partners. And you can find information on our water data exchange and our WestDat tool, the dashboard showing water rights across the West. We do not yet have our WestCat tool publicly facing, and in part that's because we want to ensure that those that may use it understand its benefits and its limitations, particularly when you start looking at reviewing water rights. Many states are using thermal imagery to do that, but some states are not. And water transfers in the West generally will require the approval of the state, and they may have different standards. And as far as our changes, yes, after 46 years, I retired as executive director effective September 1st. And then we have just announced that my replacement will be J.D. Strong. J.D. is a former member of the council from Oklahoma. Uh, represented the state of Oklahoma for many years as the director of the Oklahoma Water Resources Board. From there, he moved to the state Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and managed those programs for some time. So he's coming back to water. And water and fish go together. So you can't, and
They sure
as do
do.
ducks. So you
Yeah,
can't separate those.
right.
So we're excited to have JD stepping in and starting a new era with the council. And it will be exciting to see where we go from here.
Well, uh, as someone from Texas, I can say that's great to hear, and hopefully someday maybe somebody from Texas might get a shot at leading the council. Um, but
Well, we definitely, our chairs rotate. And actually, our immediate past chair was a Texan. So there we go.
Okay, good, good. Well, I feel better now. Um, I've really enjoyed our conversation, Tony, and congratulations on a long, productive, and successful career at the Western States Water Council.
Thank you. Well, I should mention the name too. It was John Neerman, chair of TCEQ, that chaired the council until just recently.
Right. I have interviewed John through our not through the podcast, but through a written Q&A that is something I do occasionally for Texas with Water. And
And
so,
he's back to private practice now.
gotcha,
Well,
gotcha.
thank you for the opportunity. And
Oh, you're most welcome. You're most welcome.
hopefully, your listeners will feel free to reach out and to check out our website and learn more about the council.
I bet they will, because you have given them a lot of great information today, for sure.
You know, the one thing I should mention with all of this that we cover 18 states, since 1965, we've never had a staff larger than 4 or
Are you
5.
serious? I did not
So,
realize that. I thought you were talking about 30 or 40 people to do all this work that you mentioned.
no, I've been the director. I have a deputy who's also our general counsel. We have one program analyst, and we have our office manager. And currently, we do have our informatics specialist. But aside from that, that's it. 5 of us
Wow.
to cover 18 states and all these issues.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I,
I'm gonna
I
have to
guess
think
that's the
about
one
that.
thing. If we had more staff, we could do more. So
Right.
I'll
Right.
leave that with our member states. So
Yeah. But I'm amazed at what you could do with 4 people. Hmm. Well, thanks again for being with us today.
well, thank you.
This has been Talkless Water, and my guest today was Tony Willardson. Tony served as Executive Director for the Western States Water Council from July 2009 to August 2025. I want to thank you, the listener, for spending your valuable time on this podcast. And finally, I want to give a big thank you to Anna Huff and Sarah Wingfield at the Meadows Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University for getting each episode of Talk Plus Water ready to go. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review to let us know how we did. My name is Todd Butler. Let's talk water again soon.
Thanks.